The War of Currents, Edison versus Westinghouse. What would you do to own the future? For Thomas Edison, the answer included electrocuting animals in public and building the first electric chair, all to prove his rival was dangerous. This wasn't a technical dispute. This was a scorched earth war for the very soul of modern America. Chapter 1. When Gods Fought in Copper Wire. Late 1880s. America still got dirt under her fingernails from the Civil War, still burying boys who wore blue and gray. The country stitched back together with railroad spikes and bad whiskey, and something else is humming just beneath the surface. Electricity. Not the kind you read about in science books, the kind that makes a man's hair stand up, the kind that promises to turn night into day, literally, to drag us out of the candle-lit dark ages and into something nobody's even got words for yet. Two men are about to go to war over it. And when I say war, I don't mean some polite disagreement settled over brandy in mahogany boardrooms. I mean scorched earth, blood in the water, the kind of fight where grown men electrocute elephants just to prove a point. This is America at the hinge point. We've got one foot still planted in the agrarian past, horses, candles, manual labor that breaks your back by 40. The other foot, it's reaching for something we can't quite see yet, something electric. Something that'll separate the 19th century from the 20th like a lightning bolt splits an oak tree. Thomas Edison, already a living legend by his 40s, the wizard of Menlo Park, gave us the phonograph, made it so you could bottle sound itself, keep your dead grandmother's voice in a wooden box. Gave us the light bulb, well, perfected it, made it something you could actually use instead of a laboratory curiosity that burned out after 3 minutes. Built the first electric grid in Lower Manhattan in 1882, Pearl Street Station. Changed the world on a Tuesday afternoon. Think about that for a second. Before Edison, human beings had lived in the dark since we climbed down from the trees. Fire. Candles, whale oil lamps that stank like death and gave you maybe enough light to read by if you squinted. 10,000 years of that. Then, one Tuesday in September, Edison throws a switch and Lower Manhattan ignites. 400 lamps, constant, clean, bright as noon. People wept. Grown men, hardened by war and labor, stood on the street and cried. Edison's system? Direct current, DC. Simple, straightforward, flows one direction, like water through a pipe. He understood it, controlled it. And control, that's what Edison was really selling. Not just light, dominion, over darkness, over competition, over the future itself. The man had vision, had patents, had investors with pockets deep enough to drown in, had a reputation that made him untouchable, the American genius who dragged us into the electric age single-handedly. Or so the newspaper said. But here's the thing about geniuses. They hate being wrong. And Edison was about to be proven catastrophically, humiliatingly wrong. Then there's George Westinghouse, Pennsylvania boy, born in Central Bridge, New York, but made his name in Pittsburgh, Steel City, where men forged America's backbone in furnaces hot enough to melt your face off. Built air brakes for trains when he was barely old enough to vote, 22 years old. Saw that trains were killing people, brakemen climbing between cars, turning wheels by hand, getting crushed when something went wrong, which it always did. Westinghouse invented a system using compressed air, one lever, instantaneous braking across every car in the train. Saved thousands of lives, Because before Westinghouse, stopping a freight train was like asking a buffalo stampede to sit down for tea. The man saw problems nobody else saw, then fixed them while everyone was still scratching their heads. By the 1880s, Westinghouse is already rich, already famous in industrial circles. But he's restless because he sees what Edison's built, sees those DC power stations going up in cities across America, and he sees the flaw immediately. Direct current? It bleeds, loses voltage over distance like a gut-shot animal. Can't travel more than a mile, maybe two, before it's worthless. Which means Edison's vision requires a power station every square mile of America. Expensive, inefficient, a monopoly wrapped in copper wire and sold as progress. Westinghouse has a different idea: alternating current, AC. The current reverses direction, back and forth 60 times a second. Sounds chaotic, sounds dangerous, like trying to build a house on an earthquake. But here's the magic. You can step up the voltage using transformers, send it hundreds of miles on thin wires, then step it back down for homes and factories. One power plant can light an entire region. It's elegant, it's scalable, it's the future. And Edison? Edison wants to burn that future to the ground. This is about what happens when American ambition, raw, beautiful, terrifying ambition, collides with American ego. When two men who built empires from nothing decide there's only room for one vision of tomorrow. Edison weaponizes fear. He starts a propaganda war. 1887, Edison and his associates start demonstrating the dangers of alternating current. They electrocute animals, stray dogs, cattle, even a circus elephant named Topsy, to show how deadly AC is compared to his safe, reliable DC. Picture this: a crowd gathered. Edison's chief electrician hits the switch. First with 300 volts of DC. The dog survives. Then with 300 volts of AC. The dog dies, instantly, violently. Alternating current, they say, is the executioner's current. They don't call it alternating current in the press after that. They call it the deadly current, the widowmaker. Edison's team even lobbies New York State to use AC in the new electric chair. The chair makes its debut in 1890. It doesn't go clean. The smell of burning flesh fills the chamber. Man takes 8 minutes to die. Newspapers run with it, Westinghouse to death. This is Edison, America's golden boy, electrocuting animals on stage and branding his competitor with the stink of death row. And you know what? It almost works. But Westinghouse isn't some soft-handed theorist. He doesn't flinch. 1888, Westinghouse secures the patents for AC motors from Nikola Tesla, the Serbian genius who saw the future in rotating magnetic fields. Tesla worked for Edison briefly. Edison promised him $50,000 to improve DC generators, then laughed and called it American humor when it came time to pay. So Tesla walked, eventually met Westinghouse. Westinghouse gets the weapon that'll win the war, because DC can't power motors efficiently. But Tesla's AC induction motor? It hums like a gospel choir and never wears out. Simple, elegant, eternal. Now Westinghouse has everything. Long-distance transmission, motors for factories. All he needs is proof. All he needs is a stage. 1913, Chicago, the World's Columbian Exposition. This is America showing off. 27 million people attend. They come to see the Ferris wheel. They come to see the future. And the future is lit by Westinghouse. Edison bids $250,000 to light the fair with DC. Westinghouse underbids by half. May 1st, 1893, President Grover Cleveland throws a switch. The White City ignites. People weep. They shield their eyes. Some drop to their knees like they've witnessed the second coming. Darkness owns 19 hours out of every 24. And now, just by throwing a switch, a man in Pittsburgh has banished the dark. Brighter than noon, visible from miles away. Edison's lost. He just doesn't know it yet. The knockout punch comes from a river, Niagara Falls. Enough raw power to light half the eastern seaboard. Trying to harness Niagara was like trying to bridle a hurricane. In 1893, Westinghouse wins the contract using Tesla's polyphase system, three-phase AC. November 16, 1896, they throw the switch. AC power from Niagara Falls hits Buffalo like a thunderbolt. Streetcars start moving, factory motors spin up. Eventually, it reaches New York City, over 300 miles away. Edison's DC system can't do that. The war's over. Edison is sidelined, forced to watch his rival's technology become the backbone of the modern world. By 1910, DC is finished. AC becomes the global standard. That's what American innovation looks like when you strip away the mythology. It's brutal, it's brilliant, it's unforgiving, and it lights the world. Chapter 2. The Blueprint for Every Tech War. Less than speak, greater than. Here's what most people miss when they tell this story. The war occurrence wasn't just about electricity. It wasn't just two men fighting over patents and power plants. It was the first standards war. The first time two incompatible technologies fought for total dominance, not on the battlefield, but in boardrooms, courtrooms, and the court of public opinion. And the tactics Edison and Westinghouse pioneered, they became the playbook, the operating system for every tech war that's followed. VHS versus Betamax, Blu-ray versus HD DVD, iOS versus Android. Every standards war for the next 130 years traces its DNA back to Edison electrocuting dogs in a laboratory in West Orange, New Jersey. Let me break it down. Lock-in and infrastructure. Edison understood this before anyone. Once a city installs DC, once they've laid the cables, built the power stations, wired the buildings, installed the sockets and fixtures, switching to AC means ripping out everything. Every wire, every generator, every light socket in every building. Millions of dollars, years of work, economic and political chaos. So even when AC is better, provably, mathematically, inarguably better, inertia keeps DC alive. The sunk costs are too high. The switching costs are paralyzing. Cities that went DC in 1885 are still running DC in 1895, even though every new city is choosing AC. Sound familiar? That's every tech platform war you've ever seen. VHS versus Betamax. VHS was technically inferior, but once people had VHS players and rental stores stocked VHS tapes, switching to Betamax meant rebuying your entire collection. So, VHS won. Blu-ray versus HD DVD. Same story. Once the studios picked Blu-ray, once the PlayStation 3 included a Blu-ray player, HD DVD was finished, even though some engineers argued HD DVD was actually better. Apple's Lightning cable versus USB. Circa, Apple spent a decade forcing people to buy Lightning cables and accessories. By the time USB-C became standard, Apple users had drawers full of Lightning gear. Switching meant replacing everything. So, Apple held out until the European Union literally forced them to change. Hell, it's why we're still typing on QWERTY keyboards, even though better layouts exist. Dvorak, Comac, layouts scientifically proven to be faster and easier. But we learned QWERTY. We've got muscle memory burned into our fingers. Switching would mean weeks of uselessness while we retrain. So we don't. First mover advantage isn't just an advantage, it's a fortress. It's a moat filled with money and habit and sheer human stubbornness. Edison built his fortress in copper wire and investor dollars, made switching costs so high that even a superior technology had to fight uphill for a decade. If Westinghouse had been less determined, less brilliant, DC might have won simply through inertia. That's the first lesson. Technology alone doesn't win. Deployment wins. Infrastructure wins. Making your system the default, that's the war. FUD. Fear, uncertainty, doubt. This is Edison's masterpiece, his dark gift to American capitalism. Edison didn't just compete with Westinghouse, he demonized him, turned AC into a boogeyman, made the public terrified of a technology they didn't understand. The dog electrocutions, the electric chair, paying engineers like Harold Brown to write pamphlets with titles like A Warning from the Edison Electric Light Company, funding studies, fake studies, showing AC was more dangerous, testimonials from experts claiming AC installations caused fires, deaths, catastrophes. Every word calibrated to make housewives imagine their children fried in their beds. Every demonstration designed to make AC look like Satan's own current. It's propaganda. Modern, industrial-scale propaganda. The first FUD campaign in tech history. And it works, at least for a while. Cities pass anti-AC ordinances. Insurance companies hike rates on AC installations or refuse coverage entirely. Newspapers run scare stories. The public doesn't understand the technical details, so they default to fear. And here's the brilliant part. Edison doesn't have to prove AC is more dangerous. He just has to plant doubt, make people uncertain, make the public demand their city council study the issue more before adopting AC. Delay is as good as victory. Fast forward a century. Microsoft in the 90s spreading concerns about Linux security, funding studies showing Windows is more secure than open source alternatives, planting stories about companies that switched to Linux and regretted it. Apple ads in the 2000s, I'm a Mac, I'm a PC, making PC users look like clueless drones in khakis and glasses, prone to viruses and crashes. Not competing on specs, competing on identity. Making Windows users feel stupid. Oil companies funding studies casting doubt on climate science, not disproving it, just creating enough uncertainty that politicians can justify inaction. Pharma companies running scare campaigns against generic drugs. Every tech giant with a PR budget learned from Edison. If you can't win on merit, win on fear. Make the alternative seem risky, dangerous, un-American. Edison lost the war of currents, but his FUD playbook won every war since. The patent wars. Both sides buried each other in lawsuits. Edison's companies held hundreds of patents. Light bulb designs, distribution systems, sockets, switches, voltage regulators. Westinghouse controlled Tesla's AC motor patents, transformer designs, polyphase systems. Every innovation became a legal weapon. Every new product triggered a lawsuit. Both sides hire armies of lawyers. Court cases drag on for years. Appeals, rehearings, jurisdictional challenges. The courts couldn't keep up. Judges who'd grown up reading by candlelight were now arbitrating the electrical future of humanity. Most of them barely understood the technology, so they ruled on technicalities, delayed decisions, split the difference. Cases dragged on for years, drained capital, forced smaller competitors out entirely, because even if you got a good patent, defending it costs millions. Only the giants could afford to fight, which is exactly the point. Patent wars aren't about protecting innovation. They're about exhausting the competition, making it too expensive for anyone without deep pockets to even play the game, turning the legal system into a barrier to entry. By 1900, Edison and Westinghouse between them controlled nearly every meaningful electrical patent in America. Anyone else trying to enter the market got sued immediately. Most settled, some went bankrupt, a few were acquired. The electrical industry consolidated into a handful of giants. The patent wars had done exactly what they were designed to do: eliminate competition. Look at smartphones. Apple versus Samsung. 6 years of lawsuits across multiple continents. Billions spent on legal fees. Fighting over rounded corners, slide to unlock gestures, bounce back scrolling. Not fundamental innovations, interface details. Google buying Motorola Mobility for $12.5 billion. Not for the phones, for the patent portfolio. Defensive patents to protect Android from lawsuits. Qualcomm weaponizing chip patents to squeeze manufacturers. If you want to build a smartphone, you pay Qualcomm a percentage of the total device price, not the chip price, the entire phone price. Because their patents cover standards the whole industry depends on. It's extortion dressed up as intellectual property protection. Edison and Westinghouse wrote that script in ink and blood. They taught corporate America how to turn patents from innovation incentives into weapons of war. The pivot. Here's the thing people forget about Edison. He lost, but he didn't lose. When it became clear AC was inevitable, after Chicago, after Niagara, after every major city started planning AC systems, GE didn't die, didn't even stumble. They absorbed the loss, pivoted, started manufacturing AC equipment alongside DC, hired the engineers who understood Tesla's polyphase systems, bought smaller AC companies, integrated their patents. Within a decade, GE was one of the largest AC manufacturers in the world, bigger than Westinghouse in some markets. By 1910, GE's AC business dwarfed its original DC operations. Edison himself quietly stepped back from the company to bore his name, took his wealth, and he was still extraordinarily wealthy, and moved on to other ventures, motion pictures, ore processing, battery technology for electric vehicles. The man who fought AC tooth and nail ended up rich, famous, beloved, while his old enemy's technology powered the world. Because that's the other lesson. In a standards war, you don't have to win. You just have to survive long enough to profit from the winner. Microsoft didn't invent the internet, but Internet Explorer made them the gatekeeper for a decade. Leveraged their Windows monopoly to crush Netscape, controlled how people experienced the web, integrated so deeply that the EU had to sue them for antitrust. Apple didn't invent the MP3 player. Diamond Rio beat them by years. Didn't invent online music stores. Plenty existed before iTunes. But Apple integrated it, made hardware and software and content work seamlessly together. Controlled the ecosystem. By 2008, iPod and iTunes dominated the music industry so completely that record labels had to accept Apple's terms or go extinct. Amazon didn't invent cloud computing, didn't even pioneer it. Hosting companies had been offering service for rent for decades. But Amazon Web Services turned server capacity into a utility, made it scalable, made it cheap, made it the default choice for startups. Now, AWS is the spine of the modern internet, powering Netflix, Spotify, Airbnb, half the Fortune 500. They didn't win by being first. They won by being inevitable. Westinghouse won the war of currents, proved AC was superior, changed the world. But GE, Edison's company, became a $100 billion empire that lasted over a century. Sometimes losing the battle and winning the war looks the same from far enough away.
And there's one more thing, the ugliest one, the human cost. Nikola Tesla, the man whose genius gave Westinghouse the AC motor, the polyphase system, the transformer designs, got screwed. Sold his patents for $216,000 cash and a royalty deal. $2.50 per horsepower of AC equipment sold. It should have made him one of the richest men in America. Should have. Then came the panic of 1896, financial crisis, stock market crash. Westinghouse Electric nearly went bankrupt. George Westinghouse himself came to Tesla, explained the company couldn't survive paying the royalties, asked Tesla to renegotiate. Tesla tore up the contract, just walked away, refused payment, said Westinghouse's friendship and support meant more than money, said the world needed AC power more than he needed wealth. Noble, right? Self-sacrificing genius, putting humanity first. Tesla died broke and alone in room 3327 of the New York Hotel on January 7, 1943. 86 years old, living on credit, feeding pigeons in Bryant Park, claiming he'd invented a death ray, wireless power transmission, machines to photograph thoughts. The world called him crazy. While GE and Westinghouse Electric became multi-billion-dollar giants, while their executives lived in mansions, while Edison died beloved and Tesla died forgotten. That's the cost of being early, of being right before the world's ready to pay you for it, of being decent in a system that rewards ruthlessness. How many engineers, how many visionaries got chewed up in that war? Workers electrocuted during installations. Dozens died wiring the early systems, touching live wires, making mistakes with technology nobody fully understood yet. Investors bankrupted in the legal battles and financial panics. Small electric companies crushed between two titans, bought out for pennies, absorbed, their founders forgotten. Progress has a body count. We don't like talking about it. We prefer the sanitized version, the great men, the brilliant inventions, the march of progress. But every time you flip a light switch, you're standing on a pile of forgotten corpses and stolen patents and brilliant men who died poor. That's not cynicism. That's just history with the lights on.
So, what do we learn? What did America, land of the free, home of the overclocked hustle, take away from Edison and Westinghouse trying to electrocute each other into oblivion? We learned that standards matter more than the technology itself. AC wasn't just better because of the physics. It won because Westinghouse proved it at scale. Chicago, Niagara Falls. Demonstrations so overwhelming, so undeniable, that even Edison's propaganda machine couldn't dim them. Every tech platform since has understood this. It's not about building the best product. It's about building the ecosystem, the network, the standard everyone else has to follow or die. Think about it. Microsoft didn't win the PC wars with the best operating system. Windows was buggy, crashed constantly. Blue screens of death were a cultural punchline. But Microsoft made Windows the default. Got it on every machine in every office in America. IBM compatibility. Bundling deals with manufacturers.
By the time better alternatives showed up, Linux, Mac OS, it didn't matter. The standard was set. Every piece of software was written for Windows. Every IT department trained on Windows. Every user's muscle memory was Windows. Network effects locked it in. Google didn't win search by having the best algorithm. Well, they did. PageRank was revolutionary. But that's not why they stayed on top. They won because Google it became a verb. Because every website optimized for their algorithm. Because advertisers bought Google ads. Because Android phones and Chrome made Google the default search. The network effect turned them from a search engine into a digital nervous system. Same with social media. Facebook didn't invent online networking. They just made it so ubiquitous that not being on Facebook meant you didn't exist. Your family's on Facebook, your old classmates, your photos, your memories, your entire social graph. Leaving Facebook means abandoning that network, so people can't. The war of currents taught us the best technology doesn't win. The best deployed technology wins. The most scalable, the most integrated, the one that becomes infrastructure, invisible, essential, impossible to replace. And here's the other thing we learned, something darker, something we still wrestle with. The American system rewards ruthlessness. Edison was a genius, also a bastard. Electrocuted animals on stage, funded executions, crushed competitors with patent lawsuits and propaganda campaigns, sidelined Tesla, squeezed suppliers, built a media empire that portrayed him as America's greatest inventor while quietly stealing ideas from his employees. And you know what? He died rich, died beloved, the Wizard of Menlo Park, a folk hero. When he died in 1931, President Hoover asked Americans to dim their lights for 1 minute in tribute.
You've reached the end of today's journey. Most people just scratch the surface, but your commitment to finishing this story proves you value the true depth of American innovation. If this episode sparked a new curiosity, the story doesn't have to end here. I have hand-selected a list of essential books that provide the technical blueprints and hidden history behind what you just watched. Simply head over to the About section of our channel. There, you'll find the titles that fueled our research and will surely fuel your visionary spirit. Thank you for being part of the progress. We'll see you in the next chapter.